what I would call very productive talents. You see, what you see about those when they're operating and hitting on all cylinders is productivity. Achiever likes to get things done. You make lists, you get things done. You like to be active, you can get a lot done, you feel productive. There's an internal drive. You say yes because, you say yes to things because it would feel good to get things done. It's kind of that internal drive that drives your productivity. Responsibility is very productive, but it comes from a different place. Responsibility is productivity. You say yes because you are utterly dependable. You keep your commitments. And if somebody asks you to do something, you're going to get it done even if it kills me. I will do it because I made that commitment. And so your productivity comes from an external source. It's the external drive to say yes, to be responsible, to keep my commitments, because that feels good. And that's what makes you productive, is keeping your commitments. If you want to think about it kind of in shorthand, productivity for achiever is checking things off my list. Productivity for responsibility, the motivation is keeping my commitments. So you can see that the outcome is the same, but the motivation, the talent that drives it is different. If you have both, those of you who have both achiever and responsibility, you ever find yourself saying, how did I get myself into this? How am I going to get all this done? Why did I say yes to all of that, right? Well, you know the saying, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person, because they get things done. But that can lead yourself to burnout, so you got to kind of manage that a bit, right? And so I would advise you, if I was to give you some coaching, is when somebody asks you to do something, a couple things. First of all, you can say, well, let me get back to you on that, because you kind of need to see how am I going to fit this in. The second, if it is your boss who asks you to do that, you can say, so what do you want me to stop doing so I can start doing this for you? Because you're going to have to stop doing something. But anyway, you got to kind of manage that. Now, don't get me wrong, you can still get a whole lot more done than most other people. You just got to kind of know what your capacity lies. And then your talent, about your soul, about who you are, and strengths about your role. So let's look a little bit here about strengths filtering. Thinking about that filter that you have, because your strengths your talents are the filter through which you see and experience the world. It's like this. We have all of this stimuli every day. Danny Kahneman, in his book, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, says we determined that we experience about 20,000 moments a day. So we've got all of this stimuli coming in. So we've got this input coming in each day. Each of us experiences that differently. And our talent is the filter, which creates that response, right? It determines our response to the same stimuli. Which, we can either say, yes, this will be absolutely great, or, ooh, that's going to be hard. So let me ask you this. Let's just say you're going to some sort of a fundraising dinner, something where you've got to be, and you're walking into a room full of 200 people that you don't know. How many of you look around and say, oh, this will be fun, I'll get to know all these new people, I get to kind of network and meet these, oh, this will be so great, and you walk out with 200 new friends, right? So that brings this response. Yay, this will be fun. How many of you walk into that situation, you start scanning the room looking for somebody that you know? You start thinking, if I don't know somebody here, this is going to be a miserable evening. And you find that one person, you kind of make a beeline across the room to them, and then you arrange the table tent so you're sitting next to them because it's going to be really hard. Yeah. And if it's not 200 people, if it's 200 people that you don't know and you got to walk in, oh man, that's hard, right? And that's this. It's the same stimuli, it's the same input, but our talents create the different response. And it isn't that one response is better than the other, it's just the way that we're wired. And so that's when we look at talenting and how we filter our talents. So we think about this, and thinking about this kind of the uniqueness of talent, and thinking about Clifton Strengths. Clifton Strengths identifies 34 main themes of talent. And it is the presence of talent in 34 themes. And it was originally, there's over 50 years of research. The original research before the Clifton Strengths Assessment came out in just before 2000, like in 1998, 99. 30 years of research and 2 million interviews initially for Don to develop this. One of the things that sets Clifton Strengths apart is it is research-based as opposed to theory-based. Theory-based assessments begin with the categories, then develop a set of questions to sort to the categories. Myers-Briggs is like that. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, it's just kind of the differences in the way that they're developed, okay? That's a theory-based assessment. A research-based assessment, and Don said, let's start with the questions first and see if we find patterns in the answers. He didn't say, hey, we've got these 34 themes, let's develop a set of questions to sort to them and figure out what the characteristics are. Let's ask 2 million people a bunch of questions and see if we find patterns in the answers. And that's where we find the 2 million interviews. And this is done back, we first started doing that back in the 60s with punch card computers, and kind of had, you know, the room full of thousands and thousands and thousands of cards stacked up to do the sorting. And so 2 million interviews. Now, over 21 million people globally have taken Clifton Strengths. And it's kind of growing like this. About 5,000 people per day are new to taking Clifton Strengths in over 50 countries in 26 languages. And so it's really interesting is what it is. It really focuses on the uniqueness of the individual. It gives us a common language to talk about what's right with us and looks at individually what's right with us, but also too what we find is that all of this research still, there are no significant cultural differences in talent. When we look at you know, that activator talent we talked about, an activator looks like an activator no matter where they are in the world. And it gives us that kind of that global language to talk about what's right with us. Now, but it's also about the uniqueness of each individual. The chances of meeting somebody with your same top 5, regardless of order, is about 1 in 278,000. Yeah, so you're not going to find it. And in the same order, it's 1 in 33.39 million. There are about 10, just from a pure probability standpoint, there are maybe 10 people in the United States who have the same top 5 in the same order. Yeah, that's just pure probability. Yeah, this is how unique you are. Now, some of you are saying, well, what about the full 34? Yeah, we ask those kinds of questions too, and we had one of my colleagues figure that out. It's this, 1 in 2.9523279903960 undecillion. There are 34 zeros after that.
Any twin studies?
Twin studies, we have found some things, which what's interesting is that most of the time when we look at twins, they have different sets of themes. Yeah, they're unique in their own way. So yeah, we find that, and we have found it's interesting. We don't find top 5 twins. I mean if we find strength twins at 12, it's really interesting. A few years ago, we found them. They took StrengthsFinder. We have a lot of across the country incoming freshmen to college freshmen taking StrengthsFinder, and we found one at the same university. They had the same top 5 in the same order. Yeah, it came from different parts of the country, both at the same university, I think at Arkansas State. They were both elementary education majors and both resident assistants. So yeah, but when we do find actual either fraternal or identical twins, we find that they typically have different sets of themes.
Has anyone overlaid this StrengthsFinder material with Hexaco or the Big 5?
With Hexaco or the Big 5. We do have some things with the Big 5. Questions about some of this with some other of the announcements. We do have, let's see, we've got, I think it's in, we do have it, we have done some research around the Big 5, okay? And we also, too, if you go to coaching.gallup.com, that gets you to our Strengths Coaches blog, and we have, the Big 5. The Big 5, it's a psychological construct, the Big 5 personality.
It's another research-based.
Yeah, right. It's another research base of looking kind of the Big 5 personalities, and there's some ways you can determine that. And so it's a major psychological construct, and it's a research-based process of looking at the Big 5 kind of personality types that you look for and how this kind of fits in. So if you just Google Big 5, you'll get that, and you'll find that. But we have done some work on that.
Would you give that?
Coaching.gallup.com. And this isn't around Big 5, but if you want to look at some other assessments like Myers-Briggs, we've got DISC, Berkman, some other ones that are out there. There's similar types. And one of my colleagues, if you just, if you go in the search, coaching.gallup.com, which is the blog, and if you search for Adam Hickman, and he I can't remember who his writing partner was on it. I think they've got 5 or 6 of them now, looking at some comparisons between two. And it's not ours is good, yours is bad. It's really here's kind of where the similarities and differences are between them. Yep.
Is the Gallup organization open to external research?
Is Gallup open to external researchers doing some of those comparisons? Yes. If you're interested in that, let me know, because we've got a whole process that we go to and a whole vetting thing that goes through our research team. Yeah, because we do have a lot of that happens. Good. All right. Yes?
I felt when I was taking it that if I waited a week and took it again, it might turn out quite differently. And that's a question of statistical reliability. I'm curious what research you've done on that.
Yep, retest reliability. And we just did another, we just came out with it, and it's for internal purposes only, but we did another research on that, and I can tell you it confirms what we found before. So retest reliability. If I take it again, will my results change? Here's my not very helpful wise guy answer, because that's one of my hidden talents, is, well, if you change the way you answer the questions, of course they will. But that's probably not what you're asking. See, like I said,
I often felt that there was a dead tie between three things.
Sometimes, yeah.
I had a hard time answering.
And you got 20 seconds, right? Okay, so there's a lot packed into there, and I'm going to take off my wise guy hat now and try to be actually helpful. Okay, so
There was redundancy.
yeah.
I noticed redundancy.
There's going to be some redundancy. That's why Don. So when Don as a psychologist wanted to develop an instrument that had the psychological integrity. So it does fix into the, it does things like ipsativity and all those kinds of things that are part of it, and looking at that and developing an instrument that would take mood out of it as much as possible. So that's part of the development of it, and that's why the answers aren't opposites, right? A lot of times they're not opposites, so they do that, and there's some redundancy in there to kind of figure that out and put some things in. So when we look at retest reliability, now there's one caveat, a couple of caveats around that. One is we don't have a lifetime, okay? We've got 20 years. We don't have somebody who took it at 20 and took it again at 80, okay? We've got 20 years, but in that time frame, and when we look at that, it's very consistent over time. And we also did a pretty in-depth study of, if you take it within 1 year, we take it within 3 years, within 5 years. They're within really close proximity. Perfect retest reliability scores at 1.0. That means there are no changes. Really good, consistent reliability comes in at 0.6 or higher. Everything around Clifton strengths comes in between about a 0.67 and a 0.71, which means it's very reliable over time. Which means that we will see, if you in your top 5, if you take it again, you maybe see 1, 2, maybe 3 themes switch out, but they typically don't go far. It's very rare to see number 1 go to number 34. That's kind of the exception that proves the rule. What we do see is what we call reshuffling of the top 10. Because from a statistical standpoint, there's not much space between 1 and 10. They're pretty tightly packed together, which we'll get into with your dominant talents. That's why we look at those top 10. So for example, I first took Clifton strengths before I came to Gallup in 1998. Ideation, futuristic, self-assurance, strategic, and command were my top 5. Took it again in 2002. That's the last time I took it. Ideation, futuristic, maximize, strategic, and command. Self-assurance is number 9. It didn't go far. So they're typically not going to go far. The other thing I would say is age has something to do with it. Clifton Strengths is written at about a 10th grade reading level, about 14 years on up. And if you take it when you're around 14, and I'll use my younger daughter as an example. She took it when she was entering into 9th grade at Lincoln East High School. And her top 5, empathy, activator, communication, includer, and restorative, which I could see that in her. This was just who she was, likes to fix people, just really kind of that kind of person. Then she took it, when she was 26. Empathy stayed number 1. Relator, responsibility, futuristic, and strategic. I can still see some of the others. And what that says is until you hit about 18 or so, your brain isn't fully hardwired yet. So you are going to see some shifts that are there. So that makes a difference. So you're probably not going to see a huge difference. So there is. So again, that retest reliability is good, and that good stability over time. Yes.
are there any talents of the 34 talents that tend to be in the top 5 of many CEOs or leaders?
That's a good question. Are there any talents that kind of lend themselves like to being CEO or particular roles that we would see show up there? So here's what we find. This is interesting. The short answer is no. There are not. This is the Clifton Strengths Assessment is developmental. It's not a selection instrument. There are not. These do not predict that if you can do the role or not. And this was a big thing. In the last email conversation that Jim Clifton, our CEO, and Don had before he died in 2003 was around this very topic. Are there particular themes that we show up with in particular roles, in leadership roles? And what Don said is this, he said, no, and in the email he said this, a leader needs to know his or her strengths, just as a carpenter knows his tools or a physician knows the instruments that are at her disposal. What sets leaders apart is they know what strength to use at what time, not that they have a certain set of strengths. And this is why there is no definitive list of characteristics that defines all leaders. And we went further in our book in 2005, Strengths-Based Leadership. And we'll look at this, tomorrow, I believe, in the domains, when we look at the domains of leadership talent, is that we looked at several leaders and we looked at the different kinds of talents that they have. And so we find it's all across the board. We really don't find that. So this is not predictive of performance. It's not predictive of success in the job. It doesn't tell you if you can do the job, it tells you how you will do the job. Because we've had somebody say, hey, you know what? I'm building a sales force. I want everybody, how many of you have WOO? W-O-O, winning others over. How about positivity? Okay, how about communication? How about all three? Two or two of those three? Yeah, they tend to travel together. I'm building a sales force. I want people with woo, positivity, communication, and competition. And those are the people I'm going to hire. That will give me a great sales force. To which we would say, it might or it might not. Because these do not predict it does not predict success in a role. Now we will do, and we've done this with several of our organizations, what we will do is with strengths, once we get people across the organization, we can do an analysis with a client organization to see what shows up in your organization. But again, it's purely developmental. That's a good question. That comes up a lot. Yes?
Is there data as to the distribution frequency for each of the 34?
Yes.
Weighted?
Distribution frequency around the 34, yes, among our 21. So our top 5, let me see if I can get this from memory. I may have to check my notes on it. Achiever is number 1. Learner, relator, responsibility, and strategic. Those are the top 5 across our 21 million. And that has been pretty consistent over time. Achiever, responsibility, relator, learner, and strategic. That's the top 5 of our 21 million people who have taken StrengthsFinder. Those are the ones that show up the most. Interested in the bottom 5? The least likely to show up in somebody's top 5 are pretty consistent over time. These are the bottom 4. That 5th one I'm not quite sure about. Command, self-assurance, significance, and discipline. Those are consistently the bottom 4. And what we see is really interesting. There's not much cultural differences. We are starting to get enough completes in different countries that we can kind of divide it out. And we're not seeing a whole lot of differences. There may be some subtle ones here and there. Now, word of caution, this is not a scientific sample of the whole human population. This is of people who've taken Clifton Strengths. So because it used to be you had to buy the book to get it. Oh, I bought a book. Oh, there's a code in here. I better take it, right? Oh, this will help me get more done. Yes. Oh, it's a book I can read. All those kinds of things kind of make sense of why they're up there. Yeah.
So how many have taken it?
Over 21 million. 21 million people globally.
How many language groups?
26. And it takes us a while to do a translation.
Are they all Western, or do you have some Eastern?
Oh yeah, we've got a lot. We've got East. Yeah, it's really starting to explode in China. Right now, I would say the hottest, the most used language right now is Mandarin. So, yeah, so we've got it. We've got it a lot around the world. Yeah. Okay, good questions. So let's, back to this, the 1 in 2.95 undecillion. So the question is, so how many people have ever lived? Well, here is the World Population Reference Bureau. It's the number one question they get asked if you go there. They updated in 2011. They estimate 107 billion people have lived. And so you just do the math. What this means is there never has been, nor will there ever be anybody like you in all of human history. This is how unique you are.
Probably will be. It's coincidences.
Yeah,
There's real data.
yes, there may be, but the likelihood is really going to be rare. Yeah, so this is the uniqueness of each individual. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start understanding your strengths. And we're going to do something here, which I think are going to take us up to the lunch break here. We'll do this, and then we'll pick up where we left off at 2 this afternoon. Is what I like to do, first of all, is on a blank sheet of paper, you've got a tablet there, a blank sheet of paper, take 45 seconds, write down the biggest challenges you're facing in your role right now. 45 seconds, I'm going to set my